Welcome to another happiness question answer show where I'm really interested in hearing from you, hearing your questions about life. This is what this show is about because everything to do with life affects our happiness. There's a few things I need to do as introduction for anybody who's never watched this question answer live stream, which happens every week, 7 to 8 p.m. One, I think the most important for me is why Islam? What's happiness in Islam got to do with it? Do you have to be a Muslim to take anything from this question answer, this live stream? And the answer is no, because Islam's teachings are universal. They work with human psychology. And another way of putting it is that Islam teaches that all faiths are true in their origin. So Islam is very inclusive, and hopefully you'll find that this show is very inclusive in the same sort of spirit. What else? I started wearing this hat lately. So what's the point of this hat? Actually, in many religions, including Islam, Judaism, originally Christianity, and probably other faiths, wearing more clothes is a sign of advanced civilization. And Islam claims to be teachings and a way of life for all time, including way into the future, thousands of years ahead of our time. So it's a futuristic religion. So yeah, that's my little introduction. Please do ask questions. This is a friendly chit chat. I'm very casual about the whole thing. Very interested in what you've got to say. But I do have some main topics. If you don't have questions, I've still got things to say. What I'd like to begin with is a happiness tip. So you can find happiness really quickly within a few minutes. And I usually like to talk about things that I see in society are really lacking. And the solutions are really small and simple. So the other day, I was talking to my son. My dad was very nice, and he said, he want to buy some takeaway for you. He was, long story, whatever. And he didn't know how to do the online takeaway thing. We're not living in the same place, by the way, but whatever. The point is that my dad was going to pay for it or pay us back for doing the online takeaway thing. And my son said, Dad, to me, you should pay for it. You shouldn't even take any money back and all this kind of stuff. And I said, you know what my dad is doing by offering to, buy this takeaway is a gesture of love. He's trying to express the love. And it's very hard sometimes to express your love in words. So if I was to not accept it, it's like not accepting his gesture of love, his love that he's trying to demonstrate in this kind of physical way. And so that is really important. Why is it important nowadays? So I live in the UK, in London, and I've noticed people find it really hard to communicate positive feelings towards each other. So if I, as a teacher, if I'm in the staff room is where all the teachers chill out, whatever, and they can't express positive ways of saying I love you, or I love that thing, or I love that student. How the only way they can express love, or sorry, not express any sort of feeling, is sort of through sarcasm or some sort of negativity. Oh, the food is horrible, and let's take a picture of it and I don't know, put it on what's it called? Some sort of social, on Twitter or something like that, right? It's the only cool way to express yourself. And that is absolutely not true in so many cultures. And I'm not saying that's true of all British people at all. I'm just saying it's a very common problem, and which is why I'm bringing it up. And what is the solution? Well, to going back to the story, is to accept presence. So it's very natural, like my son was suggesting, that time to say, oh, that's okay, I don't want to accept your present. It's very nice of you, accept what you're, this offer, but it's okay, I don't want to do that. But what you're doing is you're stopping that person from offering or expressing their love towards you, and then you can't. That puts one of these barriers between us, and there's plenty of barriers already. If you look in society, people often don't make eye contact anymore, especially in the big cities, and they all come from these small things. By not doing these small things, by not realizing the importance of these small things, we become isolated from each other. We become, the word alienated from each other, so that even in a massive city where there's millions of people like London and we're all cramped together, people are literally dying from loneliness. And you say, how can, if you don't know about the statistics regarding this, it's not that people necessarily kill themselves, it's that loneliness causes all sorts of problems with health and stress and things like that. When you feel like you're by yourself, you feel more stressed out, and it causes all sorts of physical problems, from rashes to heart problems, you name it. It has a massive effect. It's like smoking lots of cigarettes a day or something. So this is really important. And one of the things I like to say, and I've seen in so many really amazing movies that kind of emphasizes this idea, is that one of my favorite movies, Up, from, I think, can't remember, DreamWorks or something, Pixar, sorry. It's the small things that are the big things, and it's so true. So that's my little thought about that. If you've got any thoughts about that, please do comment. I'm checking out the comments there. Yeah, and another small thing I want to mention about the presents, because nowadays, especially in like Christmas time, people bankrupt themselves. You spend all their money on presents. Presents don't have to be big things. They can be really small things. So when I'm celebrating Eve, we give really small presents. It's just the fun of sharing. That sharing and connecting really changes lives. So or changes the relationships between people. And I just feel like I should quickly. I like the habit of copying quotes. Let's copy this one. Copy. This is a saying from Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Let's put that in there. Paste. There you go, and let's put it on the screen. Cool. This is my first time using Restream.io. Every show here is an experiment. So cool. Exchange. This is something Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said. Exchange presents with one another. Presents will remove ill will from the hearts. And you can try it out, and you'll find it's true. And even simply to thank people is a sort of present. You're I don't know, these are very subtle things. You're thanking them, but you're saying nice words to people, and then people feel them. And when you don't thank them, so what I'm saying is your words, your present can be simply words like thank you, and you mean it you say it in a way that you're trying to make the other person happy, and it works. It will work. And again, it connects people. So I will get on to the next topic. The main topic I want to talk about is, has capitalism failed? So I'm going to copy that, and let's put that as a little title as I introduce this whole thing. So let's click on that. Has capitalism failed? Why am I talking about it in a happiness show? Because, well, we can see there's people feel that there's a lot going wrong, and it feels like it's capitalism's fault, and maybe it's true. I'm going to talk about I'm going to bring up all sorts of common questions that or thoughts that people have about capitalism, but it certainly seems to make us focus on materialism, which seems to make us focus on things rather than people and disconnecting people. So there's one reason for talking about capitalism in a happiness show. It also seems to be, on a bigger scale, really destructive to our environment. So if we don't have much of an environment, or we're not, we don't have trees to make lovely air for us, or recycle our air, rather, if I'm trying to be more accurate, then we're not going to be in a very happy state when there's no air to breathe. So maybe that's a bit of an extreme way to explain it, but just a quick intro as to why I'm talking about it. So let's go for it. Let's talk about a few things that I've thought of, and don't worry about interrupting me anytime you feel like you've got something to say, and it could be completely different. I'm going to be talking about capitalism, and after that, I'm going to be talking about some cool other stuff that I've watched on YouTube. Like HUGH was saying something about his belief about God and finding truth, and at the end, I'll be talking about misunderstandings that people have about Islam. Like one in particular was, what was it? Does Islam promote or encourage beating of your wife? Because there's a verse that says something like that, and so that's worth talking about. I like to clear misunderstandings. So here we go. Oh, I just started pasting the wrong thing. Let me see. Has capitalism failed? Where are my questions? Is it? Oh, here's my first question. Okay. So yeah, I've made like lots of notes so I can save time. But sometimes I need to. Every time as I say, every time I do this as an experiment, I'm learning from it. Now I know to separate my quotes from the questions, make them bold or something. Anyway, so is it fair that 1% of the people earn most of the money in the world? So so Islam is a very clear and unusual, I would say, set of arguments, and it's neither on the side of capitalism or communism, if communism is the opposite of capitalism. So let's start with the interesting ideas. So Islam is very much in line with nature. And so in nature, it is true, there's all sorts of evidence, psychological evidence and statistical evidence that a small amount of people get on the most productive people. There's the Pareto's distribution, Price's law. They all basically say, in short, something like 20% of the people do 80% of the work. And so if you keep repeating that, you actually find that about 1% of the people will produce 50% of the output in the world. And so it's quite natural that a small amount of people deserve to handle. This is very interesting. I'm purposely focusing on the word handle the most of the wealth in the world. And that's just because they're better at it. So for example, if I don't play basketball, I'm totally rubbish at it, and so I wouldn't say, you know what, I want everything to be equal and I want to play in the NBA because that would be equal. No, everybody has different skills, and handling money, creating money, or being industrious or being an entrepreneur, etc., is a special mindset, and it doesn't come naturally to everybody either. Where we have different IQs, and this might be a bit unpopular, but IQ doesn't change over time. It just goes downhill. If anything, it peaks at around 20 or something, and it's a biological thing. You don't really choose it. You can't even improve it much. It sounds really weird, doesn't it? And so people have different IQs, and doesn't mean people with lower IQs are useless. They just have different functions in society. IQ is, I would say, a very sort of materialistic centric way of, something that focus on your ability to be industrious. Okay, so it's not the only measure of a human being at all. It just means that some people are more industrious, and they should be given that ability, that responsibility, just like a basketball player who's really tall gets to play basketball because he's taller. So we have different minds and brains and different functions, all of us. So what I'm saying is, yes, a small amount of people should be handling quite naturally, according to nature, uh, most of the wealth. But does that mean they should keep all the wealth? So this is where it gets really interesting. First of all, by having lots of money does not make you happier. In fact, it makes you miserable for lots of reasons, because one of the things we like to do is we like to struggle, we like to have a purpose, we like to be doing, achieving great things. And you'll find a lot of very wealthy countries are very unhappy. And I could go into loads of examples, but one lovely example I like to remember is when I went to Gambia. And I was walking down the street in the evening, and I said to my brother who'd been living there for about a year, I said to him, "Why is everybody in the streets? Why are they like against the walls, just standing there?" And he said to me, "Because they don't have TVs." And so what they're doing is socializing. Now, what do we have is that we have loads of money. We've got the internet, we've got Netflix, we've got everything we want. And what that means is that we enjoy ourselves by ourselves, and we become lonely and miserable. So doesn't mean money makes you miserable. It just means you've got harder choices or more delicate choices to make by having money. Money is not an easy thing to handle. And stay happy with. By default, if you don't have money and you're not dying of poverty and things like that, you'll just be happier because the default is just being with other people. So, yeah, okay. So that's I'm trying to keep short answers, because what normally happens is that I go overboard on the main topic and I don't talk much about the other topic. So that is one answer. So, oh, you know what? I'm gonna copy. Yeah, so I like to demonstrate that these are not just my own personal ideas. These are teachings from Islam. Now, if they were just my ideas, there wouldn't be much value in them, because what I'm saying is Islam is you could describe in different ways, a tried and tested method that has been shown to make people really happy. But also, much better than that, is that it claims to be the teaching of God, who's your creator. So I'm purposely putting all these quotes up, and the quotes are beautiful for me. I love reading those quotes myself. I read them like mantras and remind me of what's important. So what's this one say? There is no envy but in two cases. So sometimes the translation can be not so good, but anyway, you should not envy except for in two cases. And who should you envy? A man whom Allah, that is God, has given wealth and he spends it rightly, and a man who Allah has given wisdom and he judges and teaches with it. So what I'm trying to say in this particular saying, the focus of the saying, is that if you have lots of wealth, you will only be happy, really. So all these teachings are that if you follow them, you become happy. So I don't really want to focus on the envy bit. I want to focus on the fact that Islam just encourages you, if you are well off, to spend it well. And I will probably go into a bit more detail about how Islam make systems so that you spend your money really well. And there's some fantastic examples of how capitalism can make whole communities thrive. Even in Europe, there's been a demonstration of how Islamic economic systems have taken countries out, a city out of recession and things like that. So I'll talk about that soon. Right. What else is there? Yeah, let's go to the next question. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, actually, you know what? I want to throw in one thing. I'm getting greedy here. Here we go. I'm just going to quickly throw this in. Okay. So just another one more. Look for me among this Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He says, "Look for me among the weak and the infirm, for you are secured." That means on provision. So basically, uh, you know, all your food and your basic needs are taken care of uh, by those among you who are weak and helpless. So this is uh, one thing that I'm reminded of when I read this particular saying is that we're in a pandemic, and in the UK, one of the heroes, and I shouldn't probably say air quotes because I mean it, were the dustbin men. The people, if it wasn't for them, and the nurses in the NHS, that probably, you know, all these people have paid really badly. But if it wasn't for them, society would just collapse. You know, if the dustbin men didn't pick up the rubbish, we'd have a much worse disease problem than even with the pandemic. Rats everywhere and all this kind of stuff. So we underestimate all these small things. So even though the 1% should take care of most of the wealth, they should take care of it, which means use it responsibly. If they don't, then they'll be miserable. And if they do, they make the world a beautiful place. It's just a win-win situation. So, yeah. So hopefully that was an interesting and very different answer than you've heard from any other sort of philosophical way of looking at things. It's not really capitalism, really, in the normal sense, and it's definitely not communism. It's somewhere in between. That's what Islam is. Okay, so here's another interesting question. Here we go. Let's paste this one in. Is the capitalist system turning us into robots and making us miserable? Okay, so in many ways, yes. Okay, and why is because modern day capitalism. There's so many answers to this question, but I'll pick up on two. No, I'll pick up on one for now because it looks like I'm looking down my my list of questions, and I'll leave it for later. Okay, so one thing is, if in capitalism you don't have to, but if you leave capitalism as it is, one of the things it does is it encourages you to just spend and focus on materialism. And when you focus on materialism, again, I'm going to say the same thing as I probably said a few seconds ago, you get focused on things and not people. And psychologists have shown that one of the key needs of human beings is connection with people. I talked about this fascinating some fascinating new findings on depression, which is the flip of happiness. So if you can stay away from, you know, the key things that keep you away from depression are the things that are going to make you really happy, and they're all about disconnection of different kinds. And disconnection, one of the main ones, is disconnection from other people and meaningful connection with other people. So meaningful doesn't mean, for example, at a football match where you're just going ooh, 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 like supporting your team or something like that. That's not like a deep conversation where you're really understanding each other. And it's not a meaningful connection if you're talking about weather, because about the weather, which is very common in England, or politics, because all of these things are about other people or other things, and they distract away from ourselves. And we probably do that by purpose, because a lot of the way society works is that you're not supposed to talk about your feelings. If somebody says, "How are you doing?" you don't tell them, "Oh, I'm having a really, tough day. I'm feeling bad. I mean, could we talk about this?" Like, they have huge campaigns just to get people to talk, because they know that's one of the major causes of depression. So, yeah. So capitalism just does make you feel like a robot, especially if one of the designs of capitalism, or current modern day capitalism, is to use something called interest. Interest on loans. You pay something, you borrow some money, and then you have to pay more back than you borrowed, at a certain percentage rate, and all this kind of stuff. That might seem harmless, or it might even make sense to you because you are so used to it. But what that does is, if you look at this process, let's say a business borrows some money, they have to make more money back just to pay back the loans. And what governments do on a bigger scale, on a macro scale, they do the same thing. And what ends up happening in practice is that people are borrowing more and more and spending more and more. And the only way people can survive is to keep producing more than they had before. That is why economic growth is so important in modern Western countries, because of this. They're all hinged on this interest system. So what I'm trying to say is capitalism, as it is now, using interest, which is expressly forbidden in different religions like Islam and Judaism, actually make us work harder than we need to, and therefore focus on money, work really hard, long hours, and therefore we don't really get to make friends with people like we want to. We're just too tired, and we just zone out in front of the TV, and we just go back to work again, doing jobs we hate, which makes it even worse. So yes, it certainly makes us feel like robots, and we don't value the stuff that's important, which is human connection. And the other thing that I want to quickly throw in before I get to the next point, or the next question, why we feel like robots, is because, again, we've got psychological evidence that says that if we give stuff to people, if we are giving, we are far happier than people who just take. And they've done like experiments on this. It's amazing the kind of psychological, sociological, whatever you want to call it, experiments people are showing that are just supporting age-old religious truths. So one thing, because I love the quotes, I'm going to throw it in, that relates to what I just said. So this is a saying of Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. Paradise is the abode of the generous. So paradise is in this life and the next. If you don't find happiness in this life, you won't find it in the next. That's another Islamic principle, which is an important Islamic principle, because a lot of atheists will say, like, I rather risk having the best time of a life, doing whatever I want in this life, in case there's no next life. Well, what I'm saying is both are connected. So if you're miserable in the next life, this life, you'll be miserable in the next, and stuff like that. Anyway, we can talk about that if you want. So yeah, paradise or happiness is for, let's say, the people who are generous, and there's scientific, psychological evidence to support that. A great TED talk is about this, that talks about this, is can money, something like money does buy happiness, or can money buy happiness? Just YouTube TED talk, money buys happiness, or something. It's a great talk, full with evidence. Yes, let's move on to the next thing. Does capitalism destroy the planet? That cool. I'm actually quite impressed by myself. I'm doing all the. Normally, I forget to change the slides and stuff, so I am actually getting better at this. Yeah. So, does capitalism destroy the planet? Back to the idea that I just talked about, and And again, to demonstrate that these are not just things I'm making up of my own back, but these are actually teachings from Islam, I'm going to throw in a quote that explains so many amazing things about why we're suffering from capitalism. Let me see. Does it do it in one go? Cool. I think that is the whole thing, pretty much. There's a link. Cool. Yeah. Okay. So those who devour interest, interest on loans or get money from putting money in the bank and then therefore getting interest payments. Those who devour interest do not rise except as rises one whom Satan is smitten with insanity. Maybe that sounds like some hard to understand poetry. A lot of the Quran is something to be reflected on, maybe read a couple of times each verse. This is because they say, I'm carrying on reading right now, this is because they say trade is also like interest, whereas Allah has made trade lawful and made interest unlawful. Okay. I think the main thing I want to focus on is the beginning bit. Those who devour interest do not rise except as rises one whom Satan is smitten with insanity. This verse explains a lot of really important things about what capitalism does to your mindset and why, for some strange reason, some of the billionaires and maybe even trillionaires out there are so hell-bent on destroying our planet. Like, what sense does it make? Like, they're living on this planet as well, right? Why? So this verse explains why. So like I said before, what interest does, it forces us to have to grow our economy, and if we don't grow our economy fast enough, it basically your economy will collapse because you won't be able to keep up with interest payments. Okay, so if you are growing and creating, so growing in your economy means you have to, mine the wealth of the world, the earth, at a faster and faster rate to produce more and more things that you don't even need. It's just to keep up with the economy. It's not in line with the needs of human beings. And that's clearly shown because there are more people dying of obesity than people dying of starvation. 1.5 billion people dying of obesity, 1 billion people dying of starvation. So there's a insane imbalance there, whole number of imbalances. And this is why economic systems, even though they might sound boring to people, they're so important to fixing the problems we are suffering from in the world, environment and overwork and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, so this perpetual need to grow and grow means we need to mine the earth for everything it's got, and therefore we're going to destroy it. Okay, so no wonder, back to the thing I said, does capitalism, let's click on it here again, does capitalism destroy the planet? Yeah. Okay, capitalism based on interest does. Yeah, it's just almost designed within the system that it will destroy the planet, destroy us, even cause wars. I could go into that. That's so why did I say as those who devour interest do not rise except one, those who are smitten, whom Satan is smitten with insanity, is because it's a sort of insanity that you're mining the planet to keep up with this crazy economic race that is completely unnecessary. That's insanity, and it's insanity inspired by Satan. This is satanic kind of system interest, and that's why God has forbidden it. God has forbidden it, and Satan really wants you to use it. So we can have a whole discussion of what should we do if you live within a system which depends on interest, like should you take out a mortgage and things like that. And so yes, the short answer is it's short. You should try to limit your use of the interest system. Sometimes when you're within a system, you're forced to use it to some extent. Just minimize it. That's all I'd say for now, unless you want to ask more questions about that. Okay, so yeah, what else is there that's interesting to say about? Yes, does capitalism destroy the planet? Yes, it does. If it's capitalism with interest payments, but I don't think it's necessary. Maybe the definition of some people's definition of capitalism is that you should have interest used, but I don't think so. I suppose for me, capitalism just means using money and not communism and things like that. Let's see, what other interesting questions have I made up for myself? Hopefully you're enjoying this. Hope you're enjoying my selection of questions. You can ask me anything you want, by the way. Doesn't have to be anything to do with economics. Okay. Oh, okay. I kind of reached my last question on the topic. That's nice. Okay, let's do that. The kind of obvious question would be, would communism be better? So, as I said before, Islam is based on nature, and capitalism, to some extent, is very natural. And it does some very important things that we might overlook. We might be overlooking, I should say, maybe. And that is that this might sound really boring, but it spreads wealth to the places that it needs to be. It's boring because it just happens automatically in capitalism, but in communism, it's a massive headache. Let me explain. So in communism, the state or the government or whatever you want to call it owns all the wealth, and it has to say, you 100 people there or a million people there, plant tomatoes because we really need tomatoes, and then you plant cucumbers, or you make a car, and it's really complicated to decide what to do and keep changing it, because there's millions and millions of decisions to be made that happen automatically in capitalism through supply and demand. And then also, who should you give the money to? You might give money to a person who doesn't know how to handle certain things. Like he's not very good at technology, for example. You do lots of interviews, but it's really hard to interview everybody for every job and all this kind of stuff. It basically overburdens the government with an impossible task of allocating wealth and resources. Yeah, it's just an impossible thing in reality. So absolutely, we need capitalism. But how do we fix this problem? Like, I'm just saying good things. I think I'm saying a lot of good things about capitalism, and I'm not really explaining, like, yeah, what's the problem with it and how it can be resolved, all the issues we have. So let me tell you an really lovely story. I think it's known as the Wurgle experiment. W-O with an umlaut, like two dots on top. So W-O-G-L-E, I think is the normal spelling. It's an Austrian town, and they experimented with the Islamic idea of, but they didn't know it. But they experimented with the Islamic finance system, economic system, and this was just after the Wall Street crash of, can't remember when, before the one that caused the First World War. And so people were really poverty stricken. They didn't know what to do. And what did they do? They did just to summarize it, they made their own, let's say, also currency, some sort of stamp system. they had like, I don't know, 40,000 of some sort of real money, and they put it in the bank to make their stamp currency of some value. And this is what they did. They did two things that are really important, sort of simultaneously, that Islam teaches, are kind of the linchpin of what Islam teaches to make capitalism work amazingly for society. Okay. And so what they did was simply said that at the end of the month, any unused money gets heavily taxed. That was about it. And that in one go does two Islamic principles. And that is, first of all, no interest. Nobody can get money for keeping money, because that's what interest does. Let me quickly explain. Interest, in short, is a reverse Robin Hood. Okay. It robs the poor and gives to the rich, because the rich who benefit from interest payments and the poor who lose from interest payments. They're paying rich people or the banks or whatever interest. Okay, so interest keeps money in one place, and what they were doing in Wurgle is forcing money to go around. Now, I want to kind of explain a few things before I tell you what happened. I mean, I kind of already told you what happened. There was a miracle, and there was the people were basically rich and creating loads of things, and they got themselves out of poverty so really quickly, while all the other towns were poor around them. Okay, actually some towns started copying them. Obviously they would, right? It's because it's such a brilliant idea. And so the idea of taxing unused money is something in Islam is called the zakat. Zakat is a very interesting tax system, because all tax systems around the world, what they do is they tax your income, and poor people live on their income and rich people live on their profits. Sounds very funny, but they take a small percentage of the extra money they have, rich people, and they live on that, and then they keep investing or whatever they want and make more and more money. But what zakat does, it only taxes your profit, not your income. So in short, it really helps poor people, and there's a basic minimum amount. It's all the unused money you don't have after the end of the year or something like that. Yeah, after 1 year, and it's a really small amount, like 2.5%. But the point is that what that does, it gets money going round really fast. And that is really important. It's something called money velocity. And what that does, let me explain. Why is that so powerful? So if you have £1, if I have £1 and I give it to my friend for, I don't know, cleaning the swimming pool or something. I don't know the swimming pool. I'm not rich. That was the first thing that came to my head. Okay. So, and then he used that money to buy some ice cream, and they keep spending it really quickly. That £1, it becomes useful to so many people, and you get so many goods and services through that £1. So the faster the money goes round, the better. And that's why it's the opposite effect of interest, which keeps money in one place. So the thing the way I'd like to explain it is, money is like the lifeblood of an economic system. And it would, just like within your body, if blood is kept in one place for a while, it's really bad for you. It's called a clot. Yeah, it's really bad. But if you have healthy blood flow, then you're really healthy. Your body's really healthy, and the same with an economic system. So if I'm not, I'll just keep it short, which is basically, interest, no interest, and zakat combined, which is what they did in Wurgle, absolutely made that city thrive within a massive depression that the whole of their country was in, but not them. So what I'm trying to get across is that Islamic economic systems are absolutely amazing. I don't even know how I got there. Would communism be better? This is very much like communism, isn't it? It's like everybody gets happy, everybody benefits. money is not kept in the hands of a few people, because money is basically forced around. And if a few people do make money, this is something else that happened. You should Google this whole thing, the Worgle experiment, or the Worgle miracle, I think they might have called it as well. Just search it, WOGLE, I think. Basically, what happens is that people are eagerly spending money, or because they didn't want extra money to be taxed. They want to benefit from the money, so it really pushed the money around. And the point is that there would be no rich people as such, because they're just going to keep spending and giving it to everybody else they can. Like, they're going to invest it all around, and that's the idea, so that everybody gets a hand on the wealth. And there is so much wealth in the world. It's just sometimes sucked up in one corner, and the rest of the world doesn't benefit from it. And we know these crazy statistics where 1% of the people own 30% of the wealth. Imagine it was all spread out, well, everywhere. Nobody would have to live. Nobody would have to be homeless. It's completely unnecessary. So, yeah, there's plenty of inherent wealth in the world, just based on the resources. Wealth should be based a reflection of the resources in the world. Okay, Muhammad Ubaidat. Hey, one of my old students, who is now studying for medicine. Is that right, Muhammad? From Jordan. I lived in Jordan for a while and had a fantastic time there. I'm looking for my mouse. So hello back to you, Muhammad Ubaidat. So yeah, if you got any questions, Muhammad, please do. I'm talking about capitalism, but I'm talking about life, I'm talking about happiness. Anything you feel like, please go for it. I'm going to go on to the next topic that I had in mind. I call this Islam versus the gurus. It's not really a competition, but I like to compare ideas that are out there in the world and say, how much better is Islam? Like, I don't want Islamic ideas just to be like the same or maybe worse than what's out there. I want them to be mind-bogglingly amazing, and you to realize that, or people to realize that. Okay, so this guy called Hugh Hackman, if I'm pronouncing his name properly, the guy who's Wolf, or Wolverine rather, in the X-Men and some other whatever movies. He's got some cute. I'm gonna copy paste this as a title, I suppose. Let's do that. Okay, Hugh Hackman. I think it's not Jackman, or it's Hackman, on God and happiness. He should probably check out his video. Maybe I'm gonna put it in the comments, but not display it on the screen, because that'd be kind of pointless. So if you want to check it out, really interesting reflections he had on what makes people happy, or what makes him happy in his own insights. So he said, is one of the questions that came up from his video, or that I made up based on his video, is God everywhere and within us? Which is a very common idea. It seems to be sort of a self-evident truth in a way, because if God is all powerful, he needs to be everywhere, and that kind of makes sense. And somehow, if we kind of relax and contemplate, we begin to realize the power of God all over us. Like, how could it be that the trees and everything are just functioning by themselves? There's a power behind them that makes them do everything in the right balance, so that we get just the right amount of rainfall. And I love to mention this particular thing, the clouds, for example, which the Quran talks about, that recycles our water. It's just an amazing system. And when we reflect and pause and be a little bit grateful for what's happening around us, then we realize there's an amazing system, and God is behind it. Like, God is certainly everywhere, the power behind everything. And that's how the Quran actually talks about the universe, that the universe is like a palace made out of clear glass slabs or transparent slabs, and so you think you're in a palace and you're standing on some glass or something. I always get a bit mixed up, but there's this rushing river which represents the power of God, and we think we're standing on water, but we're not. Um, or let's put it this way. Put my hands up there. So we think that, for example, Jupiter or these planets on them, they're really powerful. We see the planet, but we don't realize there's the great power behind them. So that's when we reflect, we do realize that the great power behind everything is God. Must be. And so yeah, I would agree, God is everywhere. It makes sense. God needs to be everywhere, is omnipresent, I think is the word, and within us, because that's part of everywhere. That's kind of logical, but I think what he was trying to say, because he was basically making this claim that God is within us, is that there's certain thing within us that what he said, and it kind of comes to the next point, is that he feels at peace when he's aware of God. And this is something I want to go into, actually, I suppose, more interesting. I'm not sure what to say about is God everywhere and within us. I feel like there's something important I should say, but it's not really coming to mind, so I just go to the next one. Okay. Yeah, so is happiness found when we are at one with God? So I made that into a question, but he said something really beautiful. He said that, he's really rich, he's got everything, but it's not that he's always happy at all. He says that, and he said, something like about half an hour in or something. I think I made a comment on the video, so Khalid Safiu, check out that one. I put a timestamp when he made this particular comment. He said that the only time he really found happiness is when he was connected with God. When he contemplates and reflects on it, he thinks that the only true way of finding happiness is connecting with God. So that's a beautiful insight, and you can test that insight. It's really interesting that you can even test these things. So Islam teaches there's a beautiful verse of the Quran which goes something like, well, not something like, pretty much exactly like, or certainly it is the remembrance of God in which hearts can find comfort. So when if you're feeling stressed, so this is a happiness show, and I'm going to read your comment. I've just seen it, Muhammad Abela. If you're feeling stressed and you want to feel happy and you don't want to feel stressed, then start remembering and reflecting on God's existence. Just do that, and you'll see suddenly like the weight go off your shoulders. So yeah, test that out. Tell me what you think. What happens if you can truly reflect and realize or accept God's existence? I think that will totally change your life. That simple, very simple, small thing. Okay, so Muhammad Abeydat says, what does capitalism have to do with freedom? Okay, cool. So that's an interesting idea. So capitalism is a system that we're all kind of pushed around by. So if you like more free time, but you're working harder than you need to, then capitalism is definitely controlling or limiting that freedom. Like I said earlier on, that if you have an interest-based system where we're, in many Muslim countries, I think in Jordan it's almost pretty much forbidden or looked down on to have interest, then people work much harder than they need to, because what interest does, it makes you borrow money and then you have to give more money back, and it's an endless cycle and it keeps going round and round. So so it does limit your freedom in that way, because you're forced to work harder than you need to. That's what I mean. Now you might say in these there are many Islamic countries where they don't have interest and they're still working. They're really poor because a lot of the money is misused. Yeah, I probably won't go into that too much because I know some rules in Jordan about what you're allowed to talk about these things, so I don't want you to be in trouble. But yeah, so capitalism does reduce your freedom if you misused it, but at the same time, capitalism isn't evil by itself. It's human beings that are evil that misuse the money, or yeah, or take the money, take other people's share of the money. So yeah, I think that it does limit people's freedom in that sense. All economic systems affect us as en masse as a whole, without us often realizing it, because we think economic systems are the default, just the way things are. It costs this much money because that's how much it should cost. But actually, economic systems decide how much things should cost. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for the question. I appreciate Mohammed by that. Okay, what else have I got here that was interesting? Is the truth within us? That's a really important idea that I want to talk about. This is another thing based on Hugh Jackman, Mr. Wolverine of X-Men, thoughts in the world. So very common idea that the truth within us, we somehow know what is right and wrong, but I think knowing the difference between right and wrong and knowing ultimate truth are two very different things. So we all seem to have this inbuilt compass called a conscience, and so any step in your life, you realize that when you've got a choice, A or B, you know which one's bad and which one's not so bad, deep down. And that's why when we make bad decisions, there's a phrase that goes, "You can't sleep well at night." So somehow we've got this inbuilt system, all of us human beings. I say somehow. The obvious answer is that God has made us that way so we can judge while we're still living on this planet if we're doing good or bad things. Otherwise, when we go to the next life, or the day of judgment, as it were, we can say that we didn't know what was good and bad. So we've got this thing called a conscience. So that gives us some idea, but a conscience isn't a complete map. It doesn't tell you exactly where to go. And that's the whole point of religion. Religion is a complete guide of how to live your life and is the ultimate truth. It helps you. But what you can do, you don't have to just believe in religion. You can look at the teachings of religion and you can look at it in two different ways. You can say, does it make sense? The brain that God gave you, based on the brain that you have and the ability to think logically, do these teachings make sense? And hopefully you're finding that a lot of all the Islamic teachings that I'm talking about really do make sense. And then using your conscience, this inner truth, you can go, does that feel right? Does that work? Like, when I give gifts, do I feel that my bad feelings or the separation between me and this other person has been reduced? Does it really work? Ask your heart, ask your brain, and you'll find that Islam and all these other religions at their source do have an amazing effect like that. Okay, so yes, is the truth within us? Yes, to some extent, but we have to be really careful that the truth within us is a very limited guide. It can tell us one step at a time, but it can't tell you the whole path. And also, we're very good at lying to ourselves and ignoring the truth within us. Our arrogance can blind us. So it's not a foolproof system. Yeah, it's not. Okay. Oh, we've got 1 minute left. I think I'll leave out the misunderstanding thing that I was going to talk about maybe for next time. Very interesting. But the thing that I like even more interesting for me is this one, which is also very popular in the West. And I'll spend a few seconds on it. Is meditation the way to find truth? So it's kind of like the last question, isn't it? Yeah. So maybe I'm going to change the question. Maybe I did it really quickly. I typed this one out and I missed it. Can you find peace through meditation? That's what I'm going to change the question to. And I just want to say meditation is useful, but in very limited way. And there's a much better thing called prayer. So, okay, let's answer your question. Let's just quickly do this. So meditation is, the benefit is you reflect a little bit on the things that are happening and rather than blindly just living your life. So that's the benefit. But you cannot truly be, for example, thankful for all the things you have if you don't believe in God, because you need to, logically and emotionally, you need to be thankful to something, and you need to be therefore thankful to God, who's the creator. And so there's a lot of limitations to meditation. Anyway, another great question from Mohammed Abeidat. How is democracy related to capitalism? Interesting question, because I'm not sure why you asked that. Why is there something in my title that I've forgotten about? No, I don't think so. Okay, so I'm not sure why you're asking that. I do have a lot of topics lined up. Maybe you've seen some of the other topics that I've mentioned at some point. So there's one topic I want to talk about, which is has democracy failed us or not worked and stuff. But I'm not sure how it relates to capitalism. How is democracy related to capitalism? I mean, capitalism is a sort of financial democracy, where people, so if you call democracy the right to choose your direction or collectively choose a direction, that's what capitalism is. Like if you all, for example, go to a certain superstore or something, food store, and you give them your money rather than another one, you're basically voting for this particular store to keep working and the other one not to work as well. So you could call that sort of democracy. But I'm not sure. I'm trying to bring a sort of spiritual element or special element that Islam has provides to that, but I can't really think of it. Anyway, the main thing is I really appreciate your questions. I think maybe you're just trying really hard to give me some questions, and I really appreciate that, Mohammed Abir. That my students in Jordan was so lovely. Had a fantastic time there. Really crazy place. I love crazy. So peace be upon you. Thank you very much. Nice to see you, Mohammed Abeidat, and everybody else who watches the show afterwards. Really appreciate you watching it, because it seems to be more and more people are watching it. Please even ask questions after the show in the non-live comments. I do get notifications of that. So anyway, great doing this show. I really enjoy it, and oh, okay, come on. Let's go on a little bit longer, since Mohammed Abir that's got something to say there. Under capitalism, decisions and their implementation lead to a degree of economic and social inequality that is hardly acceptable in a democracy built on principles based on equal rights and opportunity. Okay, cool. So what you're trying to say is that in a democracy, we should sort of be equal. But I don't think that's true. So there's a very interesting debate that's going on about the difference between equality of outcome and equality of opportunity. So democracy should give us an equal opportunity to do stuff, but it shouldn't force an equal outcome. So we should all have a chance to maybe educate ourselves and go for a job, for example, but we shouldn't all have an equal right to that job. The people who made more effort should have more right to that particular job, or more educated or more specialized towards that particular job. Same with capitalism. If you're more able to do a particular job, you're a software developer, or let's say you're a doctor, you studied medicine, so people should pay you, if you're a private doctor, more money because you trained more. So I think democracy and capitalism work in a very similar way in that sense. I'm just trying to read what you said again to see maybe if I missed something. Under capitalism, decisions and the implementation lead to a degree of economic and social inequality. So capitalism leads to inequality, which is not acceptable in a democracy built on principles based on equal rights. So you got equal rights or equal opportunities, but not equal outcomes. So we've all got the opportunity, let's say if you're a student, to study if you want. You've got the right to, but not everybody's going to do all their homework. Yeah. So because Muhammad Ubaida did his homework, he ended up going to medical school, but not everybody did that. So democracy doesn't mean everybody's equal at all, because people who make more effort get more out of society and things like that. And that's let's bring it back to Islam. Islam teaches this idea from one of the main qualities of God or Allah, which is Rahim. Rahim. Yeah. Rahim is the one who encourages you to do more and rewards you for doing good things, in worldly and spiritual things. So it's very much. So thank you for this question, actually, because now I'm kind of bringing it back to another kind of side of spirituality. So capitalism rewards people who work hard. Again, that's very natural. And so does God. That's in line with God's way of doing things. So capitalism is in line with God's nature or God's way, because God likes to reward those who make an effort. So there's Rahman, there's two qualities, two kind of sister qualities. I don't know how you want to describe it, right? So Rahman is like the God who gives everybody equally everything of a certain thing, like rain. Yeah, everybody gets rain. It's not like only I get rain and my neighbor doesn't get rain. Everybody gets that. But then there's other things that you get for making an effort. Okay, God rewards you for it, spiritually and economically. So I really like that question. Appreciate it. Okay, peace be upon you. Assalamu alaikum. That's the Arabic for assalam. Peace be upon you. Christians and Jews and Muslims all say that. It means peace be upon you. I wish you inner peace. What a beautiful way of saying bye and hello. I'll catch you next week. Catch you next week as well, Mohammed. Really thank you for those questions.